Welcome to the third series of our show called ofAbaxoxi, the Storytellers, a Womanomics Africa initiative. And here we share local, intercontinental, and intergenerational stories of women shaping and creating legacies. My name is Lebo Mutloane, and I'm joined by my partner Rehema Isa. Together, we're the co-founders of Womanomics Africa, and we exist to accelerate the participation of African women across economies. For this particular series, we're excited to have partnered with BrightRock, the first ever needs-matched life insurance that changes as your life changes. Today's guest, we have another formidable guest who we are so excited to share the next couple of minutes hearing about what her story is. She also happens to be my namesake. Hello, Lebo. Welcome to our show, Lebo Mutloane, who is the co-founder of Luzuko. Thank you for making the time to be here with us. I know that you've taken busy schedule, time with kids and everything just to come and be with us this afternoon. We're so excited to have you here with us.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm here with my co-host Rehema, and we're just hopefully going to have a lovely conversation understanding what your journey has been in your personal life, in your business life. And of course, given the series that we've got today around change, just exploring some of the angles that you've had around change and some of your experiences. So I think our listeners are in for quite a treat.
Thank you.
I'm not going to read your profile because we've got quite an extensive profile that we received about who you are and what you've done. And I'm going to give you the opportunity actually to introduce yourself, because I think as part of our journeys in life, as part of the stories that we have, as part of the digital age, actually, most of our stories sometimes get told by others about who we are. We have different parts of our lives, and depending on the context that we're in, we tell different stories. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce who you are. How would you like to introduce yourself to our guests today? What do you want them to know about you? What would you like to highlight about who you are and what you're about?
Thank you so much, Lebo, for that. As an introvert, that is a very difficult question.
By the way, Rehema and I are both introverts, believe it or not.
This is a stretch. It's an absolute stretch.
It is a serious stretch. But, I would say in short, I am a perfectly imperfect child of God. I am a descendant of the Bakhatla clan, which is on my father's side, and the Xaba clan, which is on my mother's side. I am a mother of one, and with many more that I foster, as well as an entrepreneur who dares to dream, an entrepreneur who doesn't give up, an entrepreneur who believes in the impossibilities. In a nutshell, that's who I am.
I love this. The entrepreneur believes in the impossibilities, right?
Yes.
They always say impossible is nothing. Yes. And I think as Rehema and I reflected our own entrepreneurial journey, we have to believe that anything is possible, because
Absolutely.
If we don't, we can stop. But I also love the fact that you've introduced yourself in the context of where you come from. I think as Africans, that's very rich. We don't grow up in a vacuum. We don't get brought up in a vacuum. The fact that the mother next door can shout at you
yes.
and your mother is okay with it. I think this idea that you've already kind of defined who you are based on your background, the shoulders that you stand on, right?
Absolutely.
What impact has that had on defining who you are?
A huge one. And I must say, I said to Rehema the other day that this is something I've only started to appreciate and really take in, because it really defines the essence of who I am. Their DNA runs in my blood. It's in my DNA. And when I look back and I look at the men and the women in my family, others educated, others not educated, but they have strength in their own ways. And all of them bring such depth, to who I am today. So, it's in acknowledging that, and it's in embracing that it makes me a stronger person, or it makes me the being that I am. And I think we walk on this earth thinking we can do it in our own strength and in our own power. But when you understand that you stand on their shoulders, I think it gives you a totally different perspective. So it's an important part. I think it's a journey that is worth taking for anybody, actually.
Lebo, what I'm loving is I grew up in Botswana, so there's always parts of my story that come out in different ways. So when I hear somebody else who can connect with some part of my history, I get excited, right? And the reason I bring that up is because being a multicultural child at that point in time, the one culture that I was exposed to more than others is those of the Bakatla. So actually, absolutely, that was people around me were of the Bakatla tribe.
Yes.
And so my Tswana that I speak is highly Katla influenced, right?
Oh, wow.
And so I connect with that and bringing that into conversations of who we are as adults in the place of work is highly exciting. So I'm talking about one little story about where I'm from, right? Lebo asked you to introduce yourself in the context of who you are. I guess I'm curious about when people hear about you, when people interface with you, what is the story that's most frequently told about you? So what you shared with us is the story you're choosing to tell, right?
Absolutely.
Out there, we find that we intersect with people at different points in our lives. If people were to speak about an intersect point with you, what is the most frequent and most common story that emerges about who you are, how you're experienced, and why is that?
Well, I think on this one, I'll refer to people who are close to me, obviously as an introvert.
But what does that mean, right? Because I think that I find that the word introvert as well is used very differently, right? So in my context and in Lebo's context, we talk about how we re-energize ourselves, right?
Yes.
This need to recluse ourselves after any element of personal engagement.
Peopling.
In fact, people know that I'll say they're like, you're peopled out. And I'm like, yeah, that means time out. But what is this introversion? How does it manifest? How does it show up for you? What does being an introvert look like, feel like, and why is that part of the story of who you are?
So I guess my introvertedness, if there's such a word,
we can make them up.
is actually quite interesting because as a child, I was extremely quiet. And my mother always tells me, this is shocking that you talk as much as you do now. Because as a child, I was very quiet in both primary school and high school. My mother would go for parents' meetings and they'll be like, okay, who's your child? And she'd be like, Lebo. They're like, who's that? And my mother said to, and they go, oh, that quiet one who sits at the, that corner, that's where she sits. Oh, no, we've got no problems with her. We've got nothing to report. She's doing extremely well. We're happy. You can go home. And my mother would be like, no, but I'm sure there's more to this. So it's actually interesting because I think what has happened with me, I found my voice. And with time, with growing up, I became more confident, more in tune with who I am and having that voice and not being concerned how it will be. I mean, okay, you still get concerned to some extent, but not being too overly obsessed about how it will be received. But what's been important for me is to remain authentic, to be true. That when you experience me, that's why I'm not so big on titles. I want you to experience me without the burden of having to box me in a specific title. You must just experience me as I am.
Does society actually allow that? I mean, really.
And as an entrepreneur, please, as we're talking about business, can you just, how does that manifest in business?
Yeah, this identity, this persona, this wanting to be an introvert. But how the world relates with you, it's rarely on the engage with me without a title. The first thing you're always asked about is who are you? In fact, they ask the name of the country of your company.
The company, correct.
And when they don't understand or they don't know the name of the company, it's like, oh.
Yes, it's a quick, I shouldn't have asked that.
They're like, where in Santon is that?
There's no substance there. Oh, let me just back away. I guess, it's so I've got a partner in our business and it's actually quite an interesting mix because she's an introvert, but she tends to be out there. I love being behind the scenes. Yeah. So I almost think of our relationship as Dada Madiba's relationship that he had with Walter Sisulu. I mean, it's always said that Dada Walter was the one who was, influencing and saying, no, I think we should go to this direction, etc. But Dada Madiba was the one in the forefront.
Who was out there, right?
Who was out there.
Yeah.
But there was this Dada Walter at the back.
Behind the scenes.
Who was, engaging with Madiba, etc., etc. So I kind of see our relationship in that way because I actually love the background. The background gives me an opportunity to analyze. It gives me an opportunity to reflect, gives me an opportunity to see what others who are out there don't get to see.
That's interesting because the nature of your business that you're in, and I think you need to
tell us what your business.
presumes that that's not the case, right?
Yes.
I had a friend who wanted to be in the type of business that you're in, but I would say that's on an expression.
Yes.
So,
she likes things.
She likes things. I don't even know if there's an English expression for somebody who likes being out there, who is very comfortable being in the middle of where things are happening.
Yes,
so,
FOMO.
Yeah, there is major FOMO. But, we have an introvert here who's also very much of a FOMO.
Don't start it.
She cannot handle not knowing what's going on. I am so cool. But in the nature of your business, tell us a little bit more about your business and how you're balancing that need for your introversion, but also this power dynamic of being part of a partnership, right?
Yes.
And playing to the different strengths that you are. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So we are in events management and we provide that logistics support, creativeness for corporate as well as public sector.
Right.
So actually, interestingly enough, the eventing space or the hospitality space actually allows you to be in the background. A lot.
Really?
Of course. Because your clients are the ones
who must shine.
It's not you shining. It's you making sure
that
your clients shine. So nobody ever gets to know who was actually behind the scenes. And I always love because our clients say to us, "Oh my gosh, you guys look so calm." I'm like, honey, we are that duck. We are trading the water. Underneath all this calmness, trust me, there's a lot happening. Yeah. So I think for me, the space is one that just allows you to work. You work incredibly hard in the background to allow you, to make sure that your clients shine at the end of the day. And it doesn't matter actually whether it's your corporates or it's an individual. So if we're talking concerts, etc., we are the ones in the techies and the, jeans and all.
What I like about what you're saying is that often, when Lebo and I was starting with this whole notion of what do we want our stories to tell, part of what we emphasize is that we want to hear the untold stories.
Yeah.
And for me, you're just almost like a microcosm of a collective of women who, in the work that they do, they're doing the hard work, they're doing the peddling, but they're not necessarily visible, right?
Correct.
And this is true about a lot of spaces that women are occupying, whether it is a well-known environment or a lesser well-known environment, is that in any type of business, there's a lot of work that's going on and women are doing a lot of work in those spaces.
Yes.
When we asked you to do this podcast, you were like, why me?
Yes.
In fact, one of your comments is like, I'm not extraordinary.
Yes.
And I think that my comments to you was that we need to start normalizing the ordinary as extraordinary because I think we downplay the hard work that goes on to make things look simple for other people, right? And I think that if I was to take your experience as an analogy or rather a metaphor, what typically happens is that people who you're seeing shining in the public eye, they've created that persona. They've done a lot of work to be visible. Correct. And that comes with its own kind of basket of expectations and responsibilities. But it doesn't take away from those who are choosing not to be in the public eye and creating great impact for others who need to be the ones who are shining in that space. I guess this takes us to, the next phase of our engagement with you, which really is about, from where you were, talking about being that person who was demure, not very visible, to being, and I'm curious as to when in your life that actually happened, to being a bit more visible. I had a chat with Lebo on Sunday, and she was one of those, I'm going to church twice on a Sunday. I was like, okay, second time round, pray for me, please. For us all. That second time, put some of us in those prayers.
Yes.
But what I would like to know is, I know Lebo as her daughter's mom. As if you've got parents and you go to the same school, your kids go to the same school. I didn't even have her surname. So I had to ask my daughter, what's Lebo's surname? Because we know her by so-and-so's
mom. And usually it's the first child. You've got one.
Yes, I've got one.
Usually it's so and so. I'm the firstborn's mom. Always. Much to the annoyance of my other children. But yes.
And the first one takes dominance,
Yes,
right? Because my
always.
mother
The
is
first.
also called, as an African, my mother's also called
The first
by my
child.
eldest
Yeah.
eldest brother, so and so's mom, right?
Yes.
But coming into these spaces, we also acknowledge that we occupy multiple spaces as women, right? If we go back to the question of how do you introduce yourself, it's typically contextual. In occupying all these different spaces and having to be the woman that you are now, when we had a conversation just before coming in about hair, right?
Yes.
What are the different journeys you've had to walk, or rather, what's the most significant journey of change and metamorphosis that defined you? What happened in that process, and how did it bring you to who you are today, and what did you learn from that? It's a loaded question.
Very. Very. I think for me, it's actually two. It's not even one. And suffice to say that I think it's continuing. So the first one, when I started, I obviously did not start in the creative space. I started in IT. And when I started in IT, there were very few Black people, let alone women. And I always found myself in spaces that were just filled with men. And it got to a point, it was quite interesting, actually. So it got to a point where I was the head of department for IT now company. And every time a supplier would call and request for a meeting, a potential supplier, should I say, call and request for a meeting, they'd get there. And usually my subordinates were men. And I would take maybe one of them in, depending on the product that we had to review. And immediately,
they defer to them.
They would just go straight to them and ignore that I'm in the room.
Yeah.
So annoying.
Still.
Right? And I think that is one of the things that pushed me to come out of the shell and start having a voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because not only then, also in leading, especially leading men, right? You get the ones that are great and you get the ones that
need leading.
Yeah.
Need to be led a little bit.
They need to be led. So that role for me, I think, helped me to come out of my shell and to start finding my own voice and start taking some level of, I don't want to say control, but, put my foot down to say, this is my domain, this is my territory, and this is how this boat is going to go, or this is the direction we're going to take, and I'm setting the tone as the leader here. So that is the one. The second one, that one tested all aspects of who I am, or at least who I thought I was at the time, because I had just I just left formal employment, just started my company, and I'm one of those that was fortunate enough that when I left formal employment and went straight into business, I didn't have to struggle to get business. I got business.
Did you go into the same field?
I'm about to say
the same field. No, in the same field.
Okay.
So I was consulting.
Sounded like a fairy tale.
Yes.
Yeah. So I really did not struggle. I landed quite nice projects.
In IT still?
In IT.
Okay.
And really, it was great. I was making more money than what I was earning. And I was like, wow, why did it take so long?
This is easy.
This is awesome, right?
Entrepreneurship.
Indeed.
I mean, I loved every month where I had to be submitting like all these invoices. I'm like, girl, I get paid every day. It was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Then life hit. The reality started smacking me silly. But I'm thankful for it.
Don't just gloss over. What does life hitting mean?
So this beautiful contract I had suddenly came to an end.
For no reason?
For no reason. It was like, no, we actually thought we will need your services. But you know what? We've decided that no. We are reviewing. We are no longer going to the following phase, because obviously the project had different phases.
Yeah.
And they've decided, no. We're actually not going to move on to the next phase. So thank you very much for all your hard work. Wow, it was awesome working with you, but that's where it ends. Just like that. And I thought, okay. And I suppose the cockiness in me still thought, okay, it's okay.
I'll find another.
I'll find another one, right? It has been good so far.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there'll be something else that's going to come by. And month 1 went and, not bothered because I had the finances, right? Saved up. So I'm pretty good. Month 1 went, 2 went, 3 went. And I was like, okay, what is going on? 4, 5 went. And now all the savings have dwindled. And found myself 0 money in the bank account. Cell phone contract. Bye-bye. Getting calls, getting emails from the bank because they can't get hold of me now.
The contract is closed.
Right?
Yeah.
Contract is gone. But I thank God because even the contract was nearing its end. So when that went by, I was like, okay, I was done anyway. My 24 months was gone. So it's okay. I'll figure it out. But everything just dried up. Here I am. I'm a single mother. I've got a child in private school. I've got a living helper, living in helper.
Yeah.
And no money. I have a bond to pay. I've got a car to pay. No money. The shame of that meant I can't go home. I can't tell anyone about this because this is failure with a capital F.
In your eyes.
In my eye.
Right.
Well, the people calling out from the bank also.
So I was like, now what? And understand that money for me was a source of comfort, a source of worth, a source of joy, Gone. What now? What do I do? I kid you not, that period I still say today was the best period of my life, actually.
In the middle of it, were you thinking it's the best thing or is this a reflection after?
In hindsight, yeah.
The moment I accepted and stopped fighting it. The
How long
moment
did that take?
I made peace with the fact that, honey, you here. Don't matter how much you may kick and scream. You are here now. So you better make peace and accept and open yourself up to learn what this moment is about.
Mamela. How does that happen? I have been successful in business. I have failed in business. And I think that my second failure perhaps bred the most amazing lessons because the first one you still got that cockiness, right? Yeah. That realization that this is where you are is not easy, doesn't come overnight. And it comes with a lot of humility. How did that happen for you? How did you manifest? How did you recognize where you were? Was it the debit orders not going through? Was it the bank calling? That's why I want to what was
the moment?
Was it a moment? And was it a moment or was it a reckoning
or
every
a
month?
series of
Because we are known as entrepreneurs to think something's going to change. That we live on eternal hope
of optimism. That's what keeps you going.
The moment I accepted this is where I am, I actually knew it's not going to end now.
What does acceptance look like?
Acceptance is surrender. Acceptance is I am here. I'm here. And it doesn't matter whether I run to the highest mountain and start screaming. This moment is here and it's here for a reason. And I think what also helped me was my spiritual journey at the time. I don't want to take nothing away from that. It played such a huge role in terms of carrying me through that period. I think without that, I'm not sure what would have actually happened because that allowed me to stop. This is a girl who never wants to stop. I'm a busy bee. I need to be busy with something because in my head, if I'm not working, I'm not moving forward.
I'm not doing,
Moving forward is a big thing for me. But I had to stop, be in the moment, accept this is where I am now. Was I at a point where I was like, I'm okay and I'm at peace with the failure? Not necessarily. Not at that time. That came right at the end. But the beauty of acceptance is it opened up so many things. So the peace came in. That was the first thing that came in. It's the peace. Because I stopped tormenting myself. I stopped beating myself. I stopped overthinking about maybe I should have done it this way. Maybe if I did that, maybe this,
What
maybe
if?
that, and what if, and da. And the moment I accepted, the peace came in. And that's why it was the most beautiful period of my life, and one that is defining, because that period taught me the words that came back when I was going through that period was from a doctor. I can't even remember his name, but he said to me, my dear, you're saying you're going into business. It is a game of feast and famine. So I knew that it's going to take a while, but it's not permanent. So you've got a choice, Lebo. Either you can accept, open yourself up to what this moment is about. And then you'll come out at the end, because you're not going to die, baby girl. You're going to be fine. So your choice. Either you really have a horrible time or make peace and probably learn what you need to learn. And I think for me, when that hit me, I immediately went straight into peace. And that period for me was tough, but such a beautiful blessing. And it's one thing that even now, when I hit the rough patches in my current business, that is my testimony that I remember. That, guys, we're going to be fine. We're not going to die. Because I think that's what happens. The moment you hit a tough point,
The world is coming
it's
to
over.
an
you
end.
just feel like that is
Yeah.
the end. I'm dying.
So what were the lessons then? I mean, you talk about you made peace and then you kind of reconciled with yourself that, okay, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, what did that mean? So how did you move from the, okay, I'm here now, Zen moment or whatever was going on, right? Okay, I can't change, this whole serenity prayer of, what you can't change, just accept. But then something needed to shift, right? Something needed to get you into, I went to a talk once and they're talking about the fact that if in a spiritual sense, that faith is needs to be accompanied by action.
Correct.
You can't just, I believe it's going to be better
Correct.
and then do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So what then practically for you shifted you from, okay, I'm in this moment, I'm at the bottom of the barrel, whatever
Yeah.
how did you then get out? And what are the tools? What arsenal did you have that you used that got you from then to here, right?
Yeah. I think first things first was literally take each day as it comes. That was number one. Don't be here, but already thinking end of the month. Because if I'm here and I'm already thinking end of the month, I'm going to be so scared of what, I've got no plan for end of the month.
And there's a period where there is no plan.
No plan.
Yeah, I got no plan for end of the month. So what? But I also knew, instinctively so, that it was not a period for me to do anything.
And you're okay with that?
And I was okay with it.
With a child.
With a child.
And the bank.
Yes. and they're not telling anybody that knows me that this is what I'm going through.
You were still not telling.
No, nobody knew. In fact, nobody knew. I think my parents don't even know. So if they listen to this podcast, they will find out.
That's fascinating. I mean, as an African child, one of the things you grow up with is Dipiritsa Gondlung.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the stories or the
Yeah.
secrets of the house mustn't be shared outside. I've got a different context of what that means today. But you're saying that you went through this internally,
Correct.
alone.
Correct.
Wow.
Because I was raised to be an independent child. Also remember, at the time, one thing about me, I've always been, if they go right, I go left. Yeah. As much as I was not talking, but it was interesting that they would go right and I would go left in everything. So I rebelled. And for me, I just needed somebody to tell me, you can't do something. And I'd be like,
I'll show you.
I'll show you.
I'll show you.
That's your magic.
Get it done, right?
Yeah.
And that was me. That was my childhood. And I was the first one. I left home when I was 19. And I'm not talking leaving home to go to school. Move out into my own apartment, paying for it on my own. So I've always had that sense of independence. So now here I am. I go home and I say what?
Independence
Pride
means
as
that,
well.
right?
Pride as well
Yeah.
was not allowing. Let me be honest. Pride as well wasn't allowing because, as I said, there's a sense of shame, right? But I think for me, as I said, it became more about there is a lesson. You can't just be going through this for nothing.
And what was the lesson?
The first lesson was to, not see money as a definition of my worth. That it must now define whether I'm content or not content, whether it must define whether I'm happy or not happy. Money was a security for me. That totally shifted. Because whether I've got money or I don't have money, if I'm on a mission and I've got something that I need to achieve, it must be done, whether there's money or there's no money. And I love that because, as I said, it became the lesson that I carried through, even in my current company. So that's why when the likes of COVID hit, it was scarier, but I was like, no, guys, we'll get through this because I had learned my lesson.
I've seen this before.
I've seen this before, guys.
Yeah.
I've seen this before.
Yeah.
But again, God just came through for me in ways that I can't even explain to you guys. There would be just someone random who'd call me, someone who doesn't know my situation, and be like, I don't know, I feel like doing X, Y, and Z for you. I'd be like, oh, okay, or someone, just random acts of kindness that I can't even explain. But in that period, my child continued to go to school. In that period, thank God, my house was not taken. It was almost taken, not once, not twice. My car.
I like how she says it so lightly.
You don't. Yeah.
That's important. I mean, there's something that's coming through about your resilience. But yeah, please go on.
But also what you value. For me, it's like reframing value. But yeah. What's important?
And it was a beautiful time because I also got to bond with my child. I don't know how many times I've watched Princess and the Frog.
Why was that?
So we didn't have DSTV.
So you're watching what? The DVD?
We're watching the DVD. So every time I fetch my child from school, we'd come home, she'd eat whatever's there. And that's the other thing. There was never a day where we did not have food. It was not necessarily the food I wanted to eat or, craved for, but there was food. And it made me appreciate the little things in life. That, quite frankly, whether I've eaten sushi or I've eaten burrito with water,
I've eaten.
Yeah, my stomach actually doesn't care. He's happy that it finally got something.
That's what matters. Value. What
my
you value.
stomach doesn't actually care.
It doesn't.
We're the ones who put in the value systems.
Yes.
What do we value?
What matters? What's important?
Absolutely.
Give it sushi.
Absolutely. And when I'm walking down the road, nobody knows what my situation is. They just see another woman. So it totally shifted things for me. And it made me start questioning, okay, are you doing this business thing for money? Or is there more to it? Because those who knew what I was going through kept on saying, but you can go get a job, you can find a job.
That's always the quick response anyway to when you're struggling as an entrepreneur.
Where's your CV? Update your CV.
Why don't you get a job? You've educated. I'm sure you can get something, right? And I'd be like, no, because that's not my journey. That's not my journey. And I know this for sure. I may not know what is ahead of me, but I know I'm in the right place.
And now, the business that you're in now, what business is that, and what changes are you seeing in that industry? And
So, COVID has been a blessing, and okay, I choose to see the positivity.
we love the positivity. That dose of positivity.
Yeah, let me just declare that. I mean, COVID was hard. It was hard, but there are lessons. There are blessings. I think the biggest lesson for me, actually, from COVID is how connected we actually all are. We may pretend we're not. We may, I think the world's just tells us all the time about individuality and da-da-da and da-da-da. You need to be this, you need to be that. We are constantly competing with one another. We are, but in actual fact, at the core of it all, we are all connected. And I think if we carried that, even in business, even in politics, something will shift. Something will shift. So for us, we were really grateful because we were able to keep our doors open. There are many of our counterparts that shut down. And this morning, actually, we're talking about it. So the events industry is linked to the hospitality industry. And, I was talking to another colleague about what's happening with the airlines and what's happening even with hotels. The demand is so high and there's very little supply. And with that, sometimes it can manifest a don't care attitude, right? Because there's an overflow, there's an abundance. So a lot of businesses shut down. It changed the playing field a bit. The hospitality industry is not known as one where there's a lot of collaboration. But I think we're forced over the COVID period to collaborate and to work together. So that has been a blessing. The hospitality industry is not an industry that has always known, especially in Africa or South Africa, let me say, as an industry that is technologically savvy, purely because it's a service industry. And if you're talking service, you're talking people, right? But COVID forced us to rethink around technology. And for me, actually, there's a lot of opportunity there because the technology that you currently find doesn't quite speak to what we do, or it's not a proper fit and well aligned. But I think it's also understanding, and I see it a lot, and I'm not sure if that's the way we should go, where you're seeing a lot of robots being at reception, welcoming
yes.
people. I'm not sure that's the direction we should go. In my view, the hospitality industry needs to be using technology for efficiency. Efficiency of how we do business, not necessarily as it should take away or replicate something. I don't know. So I think we I don't know. There's a misfit that I'm seeing personally as a person, again, coming from a tech
industry
background, as well as the creative space. So I think there's a misfit somewhat. But you are seeing, I think, the hospitality industry embracing technology a bit more than it did, which is great. We still have a lot to learn in terms of how then do we use it, as I said, from an efficiency perspective, or how do we use it to enhance the experience? Because that's what our industry is about, experience, right? We are there to make sure you have the experience.
Indeed.
Because that's what you're paying for. So it's those shifts that you are seeing, and I am really hoping that with the shift and the demand being so high and the supply being so short, that we're going to actually see more people going and taking the leap of faith. Because, you talk about transformation in the hospitality industry, it's non-existent. People of color are still really at the end, at the bottom
of the rung of the value chain
of the entire chain
in 2022.
In 2022, and you find here and there some women that have taken the leap of faith, opened up hotels, boutique hotels, right? Which is totally amazing. But we still need a whole lot more. We still need a whole lot more in the industry. So I'm hoping that now that the play field has leveled somewhat, there's a gap that has been created that will see a lot more people actually just, taking that leap and closing the gap in the industry. And I'm hoping it's more and more people of color, particularly women.
And more women.
Yes, absolutely.
Is it that Japanese saying, where there is chaos, there's also opportunity? And as chaos came in, that was an opportunity for us to actually shift the playing field, being cognizant of what needs to happen. Lebo, we know that if you give us
We
an
can
opportunity,
go
we can go
on.
on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But I think that, we partnered with Bright Rock on this series, this Mastering Change series. And it really is for us an opportunity to capture the real life stories of an intergenerational perspective of African woman, and, multifaceted context of that woman and the journey that you've shared with us, coming from a family with, you said, I think in your pre-interview, intellectuals and entrepreneurs, navigating, starting up a business. You're representative of the independent woman that we see these days who fixes her own problems. Is not necessarily what I took from that is that you're not necessarily waiting for the world to solve, and not every problem needs an intervention from others.
Indeed.
Owning
Absolutely.
the fact that life is sometimes uncomfortable. Life is sometimes challenging. It's not that others are going to come and save you, right?
Yes.
I think there's a saying that's out there that, my sisters would always say, that my dad would say, nobody's here to save you.
No.
Yeah.
And that comes through very strongly in your journey, where we are being, often there's words of, look out, go get help, go seek help. But sometimes the help is you.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the journey for enlightenment is a self-awakening, and that's so personal.
Absolutely.
And people will meet you where
you
I
are.
think people work with people that are moving.
Yeah.
We always say with Rehema that, you know what?
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're waiting for people to come to the station before the bus takes off,
Yes.
they're all waiting to see what you're going to do. When you've moved to the next station, somebody will say, okay, I'll climb onto this bus, right? And I think people want to work with people that have a sense of agency around the environments that they say they're solving, but around the things for themselves as well. So I think this conversation has certainly kind of highlighted that for both of us, right? Around the importance of that.
Yeah.
The importance of keeping going, of not waiting, of knowing what it is that you want, your spirituality being your grounding. And I think that we all think that spirituality means something different for all of us, but using that as your anchor point, right? And I think importantly is to graduate from the lessons that you've learned. Your emphasis, this is teaching me something, meant that for you, you're acknowledging that until I'm graduating from here,
I'm going to
stay here. So that emphasis, this is teaching me something, a learning and a mind waiting for the knowledge to appear, but also embracing the lessons, the moment of the lessons. I'm listening to this and I'm thinking of my daughters who we're giving guidance to right now, and the importance of sitting through the pain, the challenges, owning it as your personal journey, which we sometimes don't get the time to pause around, right?
Yes.
It's about owning that journey and saying it will be uncomfortable. It can be messy.
Yes.
It can be unpopular.
Yes.
You may feel ashamed because of what you've ascribed your personal journey to look like. But sitting here and looking at you now, it's
not
also saying it's worth it.
And it's not the end.
And it's not the end.
It's not the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, when all is said and done, all you have is you and your head and your brain. That's it. You can, whether you're sitting in an office in the township, whether you're sitting in an office in Sandton, on the highest level floor, all you have is you. That's all you have. So invest in yourself. Invest in you. Interestingly, today I was attending a talk, and they were talking about how, as human beings, we actually, it's, in the shape of a carrot, what we do. Because our what you see on top, and if you think of a carrot, normally you see the greenery on top, and the carrot is actually in the soil. And they're saying those are your beliefs, and what you believe, you will manifest. It's not a Zen thing. It's not a New Age thing. It's the truth. It's the truth that what you believe in. I met a gentleman who once said to me, "I don't care what you believe in, but you have to believe in something, even if it's your grandmother's old shoe. Something. Because that is what will sustain you. That is what will manifest into whatever fruit. If the core is not believing, grounded, drawing from somewhere, really, it doesn't matter what you do. That part, I think, as an entrepreneur, it's very important. You must believe in something. There must be something that anchors you, because at times in my case, it will all be wiped away. Then what?
Then what stays?
Then what stays?
Then what stays?
What do you do then? Do you then go and say, oh, this is, go back to...
First principles.
But for me, I think first principles is purpose.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
The importance of purpose and grounding you. And I think having listened to you now over the last couple of minutes, what has actually shaped your journey has been that, a very strong sense of identity, of who you are, of where you came from, of where you're going, and what you're trying to shift, I think, and how that has actually helped you navigate different spaces, I think are wonderful pearls of wisdom that our listeners will be able to glean on and listen to and hear. And I think hopefully even translate practically into their own lives. So thank you for the time. Thank you so most importantly for the insights and for the gems and for the vulnerability of sharing stories. I think part of the reason we have these kind of stories is also just to have authentic conversations around people's journeys and what they go through. And I think we are most honored that you've allowed yourself to tell us some of the uncomfortable parts of your journey, because as we said, sometimes the story that's out there is not necessarily the story that is
inside,
and so thank you for giving us insight into that. And I think this will be definitely one of the top ones in terms of what our listeners can, because it really has been a very authentic, open, real conversation, not just about you and your professional journey, but also your personal journey. So I think on behalf of Rehema and I, Womanomics and Bright Rock, we'd like to thank you very much for this time.
Thank you very much. It was awesome. It was absolutely beautiful, and wishing you all the best.